네, 좀 전에 데비테 교수님의 이 주제와 관련해서 좀 복잡한 양상을 띠기 시작하다가 스톱됐습니다. 이제 디스커션을 이어가도록 할 텐데요. 소개를 해드리겠습니다. 패널로 나와주신 분들. 옆에 계신 분은 락스미디어 컬렉티브의 슈도아브라타 생굽타님입니다. 박수 부탁드릴게요. 네. 그리고 데이비드님은 아시고요. 옆에 계시는 분은 저희 이번 워크숍 프로젝트 네 그룹이 참여를 했는데요. 그중 한 그룹인 베트남의 하노이 동네배에서 대표로 이번에 참가해주신 응어의 응어탄 죄송합니다. 발음이 굉장히 어려워서요. 네, 응어탄님입니다. 네. 그리고 옆에 계신 분은 이번에 워크숍 프로젝트에 또 참여해주신 필리핀의 로소트로스 그룹을 끌고 계시는 존 토레스님입니다. 박수 부탁드려요. 네. 그리고 옆에 계시는 분은 워크숍 프로젝트 참여팀인 역시 인도네시아의 포럼 렌탱을 끌고 계시는 하피즈 란차잘레님이십니다. 네. 네. 그리고 이번 워크숍 프로젝트를 총괄 디렉터라고 할 수 있겠죠. 네, 핸드메이드 필름넷 스페이스셀의 대표, 현재는 대표는 아니시죠? 네, 네, 이자훈 감독님이십니다. 네. 그러면 제 생각에는 데비테가 저도 패널로서 참여를 하고 좀 더 아마 궁금하신 이 패널 분들에게 질문하고 싶은 부분과 이런 것들이 있을 것 같습니다. 그래서 적극적으로 질문을 던져주시고 하면 저도 옆에서 서포트를 해드리겠습니다. 그럴까요? 아니면 제가 질문을 던질까요?
Sure, no, I'm happy to ask a question. Yeah, for those of you who maybe haven't seen yesterday's program, the filmmaking groups have been invited here in the context of a collaborative authoring process, actually. And I have to confess that I wasn't fully aware of how much work they have done together in this vein. And so yesterday they showed the results of their collaborations, which involved, and please correct me if I get this wrong, but which involved a kind of group sourcing of footage from their respective milieus that was put into a kind of database from which a series of 4 works were then edited into existence. And it was really interesting to me when they presented their process. When each group talked about their process, it was interesting to me how prevalent the individual relationship to footage was. That even though the context, the project was framed as an exercise in stepping away from individual authorship, at least in the maybe conventional sense that I was talking about earlier, that even in such a context, anxieties around the relationship, or if you like, the claim that individuals had to certain parts of the works was still very strong. That there was a need to articulate one's individual stake in that production. So I'd really like to hear from any of the panelists, you know, their reflections on this, not necessarily philosophical, right, but also practical. You know, that it seems to be an accepted, it seems to be, by your participation in a project like this, it seems to be accepted that the notion of an individual authorial relationship to the work ought to be problematized. It ought to be, its complexity ought to be an issue. It ought to be a problem that we think about. And so I'd really like to hear what people, what your experience of that was. How did you feel about the negotiation and the outcome?
덧붙여서 제가 뭐 추가로 말씀을 드리자면은 사실은 이제 그 여러 멤버들을 각 그룹이 팀마다 한 10명 정도씩 참가를 했습니다. 그렇게 해서 그 그룹마다 각자 똑같지는 않지만 각자의 방식으로 협업의 어떤 방향성을 설정하고 이렇게 해서 대표자가 모아진 비디오 클립에서 골라서 편집한 작품을 상영본으로 만들었고, 그리고 나머지 모든 소스들은 저희가 현재 오픈한 웹사이트에 업로드가 되어 있습니다. 그런데 이제 한 가지 예가 예를 들면 스페이스엘의 어떤 작가분은 이제 작가로서의 어떤 이건 내가 작가로서 어떤 계획을 가지고 만든 작업의 일부이기 때문에 웹사이트에서 그냥 공개가 되는 것을 좀 꺼려하시는 경우도 있습니다. 이게 혹시 누군가가 다운로드를 해 갈 수도 있는 그런 위험성도 있다고 생각해서, 그렇기 때문에 아마 데비테님이 말씀해주신 부분도 그런 부분과 맞닿아 있는 것 같습니다. 그러니까 협업에 의한 어떤 프로젝트이지만은 그럼에도 불구하고 개인의 욕망이라는 것은 완전히 배제할 수 없다라는 지점. 네. 그래서 아마 말씀을 쭉.
일단은 두 가지 결로 좀 말씀을 하신 것 같은데, 첫 번째 이야기는 어떤 개인의 작가성을 좀 멀리하는 방향으로 작업을 기획한 것 같은데, 사실은 거기에 여전히 작가성이라는 것들이 강하게 남아있다라고 이제 말씀하셨는데, 기획 의도 자체가 반작가주의는 아니었기 때문에 그건 방법론에 있어서도 저희가 그 참가자들이 듀레이션을 결정한다든가 또는 그 후에 편집자가 그 오리지널 이미지에 어떤 손을 못 대게 하는, 단순히 이제 배열만 가능하게 하는 방식으로 사실은 두 가지 사이의 어떤 긴장감을 이제 조성하게 하는 이런 것들이 사실 고안되었기 때문에 그 반 작가주의라기보다는 저희가 그 익숙하게 가지고 있었던 작가성에 대한 어떤 탐구 뭐 이런 정도로 좀 생각을 했으면 좋을 것 같고요. 그다음에 이제 김문희 선생님 말씀하신 부분은 대단히 그 문화적이고 좀 실제적인 어떤 고민이 될 수 있는데, 어저께 끝나고 술 마시다가 이제 뭐 존 토레스하고도 뭐 얘기하고 뭐 얘기했는데 존 토레스는 아무 문제 없다 그랬고 뭐 자기 물어보지도 않을 거라고 그냥 올리겠다라는 뭐 얘기를 했는데, 사실은 이제 저희 팀 같은 경우는 굉장히 또 예민한 문제가 될 수 있거든요. 각 그 아티스트들이 개별적인 어떤 컷에 대해서는 올리지 않았으면 좋겠다라든가, 그래서 사실은 저는 굉장히 거쳐야 되는 또 절차가 또 남아 있는데, 이런 것들 또 문화적으로 생각하는 그런 자신에 대한 소유 뭐 이런 것들이 있는 것 같아서 굉장히 좀 흥미로운 부분이었던 것 같습니다.
Just like to maybe continue from our conversation. What I mean is I think these artists are people I worked with from the past, and I kind of approximate how they feel about contributing about their work, because there is an exchange actually. So per artist we give a sum, and I think I mentioned yesterday that for a lot of us really these are files that have their terminal folder, their end destination, but now there's a chance that they can make something out of even an exchange of files, and for this to have a chance to be shown actually somewhere else. And so I would I believe none of them really actually are thinking how they would be used, because there is this exchange already that just but they're excited actually to for an event to happen, that there will be a screening, and there's a hope that their own footage will be there. So I think a part of them is still is still is still there, and in fact, some of them are really without any guarantee. They post on their social media accounts to say that we're part of this, even with little chance that maybe even one of their clips will be there. But I know for all of them, they don't show any concern actually with how everything was arranged and ordered in the final edit. And actually, I am the one who hounds them actually for us to get organized and to meet and to to have everything uploaded, and somehow none of them has really reached out to me, but I know that they're excited. But I'm quite actually now curious now that you're bringing up the question, how they really feel about showing this, and how much are they really still hoping that their clips were shown, and in what manner, in what way.
And I just want to add a small thing. I think that when we use authorship, maybe it's very dependent on concrete situation, especially when we when we discuss about capital, we also think about cultural capital. So if so for filmmakers or artists, they use authorship in some way when they want to fight against something, or when they must deal with some situation in the world of art. So for us in Hanwoo Lab, we are aware of this the meaning of the project. So when we share our videos, our clips, we think that we makes something meaningful, and why we need to use our authorship in the situation that we want to fight against capital. Yeah, so this my sharing. So in this concrete situation, we totally agree with each other that we can share clips freely. Yeah.
Sorry, can I just add that maybe I failed to just to say that all of us, I think, felt that we profited from this, knowing that there is this other component that they haven't seen, that they will contribute to a much larger piece of work, that their own shots as the basic unit can be added onto a flow, or another shot even, to generate some other things that can provide for a whole. So I think that in itself is for us in the Philippines very meaningful.
John, you mentioned that. You mentioned that the phrase like a destination folder or something. I'm just interested what actually technically happens. What's the status of the footage now? If one of the participants wishes to make something with the footage that has gone into these projects, can I assume that the author retains, that individual retains the rights to do whatever they want with it, or has it been consigned?
Yeah, I think that's also part of the ongoing discussion. But we would like to actually have the other artists to. Well, it's my opinion to. Maybe for me, it would be very nice for all of us to really actually make work out of this Vimeo account. That is a collection that they have access to now, all of each other's work. But I know it's a little bit complicated for the other countries.
Okay, trying to answer David's questions. Yeah, I'm part of generation of living in dictatorship era, no. So when we are as an artist, it's like become like one direction to against regimes. I think. And then after 1998, my generation's like thinking about how to survive with this kind of situations. So one thing's really important. What happened after 1998? It's a collective. So artist initiatives like being together. It's part of survive. Part of to share about what you know, what you have. So that's the idea. I mean, idea about the collectives. What, as I know, in Indonesia, especially in Jakarta. So when we decided to have collective and working as a collective, there is a one commitment that you can share your knowledge, your capital, social capital, together in these tables. So everybody can use it. So everybody can share and can put it as something that can be used as a public content that maybe inspire, maybe change some things. So when I got invited to this project, John Wook sent me email that first discussion when in Forum Menteng is about this: how we can trust that everybody here, that's other collective that they want to share to us this clip, this footage, this the idea about the capital. So I think when it's already there in online, because all the collective put it online, that's can download it. All the participants in this projects can download it. It's not. It's about John Torres clip anymore. It's about knowledge, image, footage that we can use, that may be important to build an idea with it. So it's more like something that to reduce the concept of authorships in a way, but it's also to make a new definition of authorships, because it's collective working together. I really like, because Sudap get invited also to talk, because he's quite long time collective working, and I think this kind of projects, it's really important to put how this course in the context of authorship in the cultural activity, to put in new meanings, new understanding, because me myself, sometimes I'm not really believe anymore about the institutionalized things.
Sorry, I'm speaking so much, but I just wanted to add, because David was asking about maybe some practical things. Really, practically, as a filmmaker, I have not. I've encountered footage in this account that I knew I wish I captured in the Philippines, in Manila, because for example, the image of the trains is very, very strong for us in the Philippines, of protests. And I knew that I couldn't be out of the house because I'm a dad, and with other things that have overtaken my daily things, I still yearn that I get this experience, that I was able to shoot all these things. And so because of this, I was able to make use of certain things that feel very similar to my own yearning, to an experience that I wish I shared. And also, for example, even in Space Cell, just to illustrate another, the 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 mythical figures that I try to get from their source footage is also something that I wanted to have for the longest time, to make new work. What I have are bodies trying to train for to have a projection of a brighter future, to look upward, no? But these are not enough, and in the end, I was able to collect from everyone just to find new meaning, but also in the end, I was able to, admittedly and honestly, I was able to make my personal letter to Duterte, because of all these things that I was able to gather. And I think even with the personal footage from our members, they knew that they would all contribute to a certain time in a certain period, that these are all being assembled.
It sounds then that there is a contemporaneity that is possible in the collective mode that maybe was hard to do as individuals. But I actually am also interested in the, if you like, the kind of economy of images that this experiment is a part of. Which you could also think of as a very big experiment, a very social and massive experiment in the sharing of video, which of course is a ubiquitous and relatively global kind of thing now. I'm curious if amongst your groups, if there was a discussion about that, about what is the relationship of this footage, which you are pooling. In a way, it's kind of like an offline file sharing network, right? Like, what is the relationship of, or the difference, or whatever, between that pool of material and the bigger video sphere around us, which is more and more part of our everyday exchanging? Was this discussed?
뭐 진지하게 논의를 한 것 같진 않고요. 이렇게 그래도 그런 얘기들을 좀 한 부분들은 일단은 참여자들이 굉장히 어떤 훈련된 아티스트라는 점들이 기존에 어떤 당연히 이미지를 포착하고 수집하는데 그것으로서 일단 그런 기능을 할 것이다라는 기대를 하게 한 부분들이고요. 저희 같은 경우는 그 참가자들 간에 갖는 관계가 어떤 것들을 구체적으로 포착한다든가 이런 것들을 논의한 적이 없고, 오히려 이제 키워드를 제시하고 아까 얘기했던 것들의 확장일 수도 있는데, 연장일 수도 있는데, 그런 개개인의 작가성들을 사실은 최대한 보장한 부분들. 그래서 오히려 일부러 서로 간에 구체적인 뭘 찍고 있다든가 이런 거를 얘기를 해본 적이 없고요. 오히려 나중에 우리가 이미지를 편집한 것 이외에 다른 결로 어떤 과정이 있었는지를 위해서 이메일 또는 뭐 전화로 이제 주고받았던 내용들을 좀 글로 정리를 해서 사실은 글과 제가 편집한 이미지는 굉장히 다른 결로 가고 있다. 그래서 이제 저희들은 그렇게 작업을 했는데 다른 팀들에게는 제가 조금 또 다른 느낌을 좀 많이 받았고, 특히 하노이독 같은 경우에는 상당히 조직화된 어떤 것들 하고 포럼 렌팅도 마찬가지고 그런 느낌들을 받아서 다 개별적으로 그런 시도들이 좀 있지 않았을까 하는 생각을 갖고 있습니다.
또 다른 방향에서 협업을 하고 계시는 생국타님이 이런 또 어떤 주권성 작가에 관련한 데베테가 제시한 어떤 주제에 관련한 부분에서도 또 이 연결해서 이번 워크숍 프로젝트와 관련해서도 하실 그 얘기하시고 싶은 부분들이 꽤 많을 것 같아요. 얘기를 좀 들어보고 싶습니다.
Thank you, Yoon-hee, and thank you to all of you for your contributions. It's been really a learning experience for me. There are several ways in which I can think of tying all the things that I've been thinking. One of the first that I will say is take a look at a coin. This is 100, what is it, one coin? And it's here 100. And like many coins in many parts of the world, it's got the head of a king. You're a republic. There's no reason for you to have a king on your coin, but you do. And I think that I'm very curious about why we need heads of kings in our daily life. It brings me back to the first slide that David started with, which is about when the king is a medium, the medium is the king, right? It's the quote from the scholar Ashley Thompson, which has something to do with what does sovereignty mean? What does sovereignty have to do with the presence of portraits and pictures in our lives? And what do we take from it? In English, a word for a coin is also sovereign. The gold coin, what used to be called the guinea, is the sovereign coin. It's the king of coins. And that might have a relationship with how values or value is produced in society. Why is a coin a coin? What does it do when we pass a coin from one hand to another hand? There are, I could argue, following actually the ghost who's been in our room for a long time, Harun Farokhi, that there are only two kinds of films in the world. There is the first film in the world, which is the film made in 1895, Workers Leaving the Factory. And Harun Farokhi made this wonderful installation and a film. The installation is called Workers Leaving the Factory Across 11 Decades. And there is another kind of film in the history of cinema, which begins actually roughly now, I believe, in the year 1900, which is the film of Queen Victoria's royal visit to Ireland. And it's a remarkable piece of footage. I'd advise you all to see it. So it was very interesting, fascinating for me to see you invoke the return of the Thai monarchy in 1898 with cinematographic equipment. So maybe they predate Queen Victoria in the making of a film. But the Queen Victoria film is fascinating because it shows her wearing dark glasses and kind of looking at people. And it's a very strange bit of footage because it suddenly shows you this fat lady who is the head on the coin, right? And she's been on the head on the coin for almost 100 years. So the Victorian era is an epoch of time that has her name on it. Similarly, in Japan, they name time after their emperors. And it's quite interesting to say Georgian architecture or Edwardian, whatever it is, like in art history or architectural history, you will name an epoch and a time after the name of a king or a sovereign. Think back on the footage of the workers leaving the factory. They are leaving the prison of time. They're going away from the factory, which claims their time, to free time, right? On the one hand, you have pictures of people leaving the prison of time to do something else. So one of the bits in the footage that really fascinated me, and I think it in your workshop project, and I think it recurred, if I'm not correct, if I'm not wrong, in almost all the films, is a shot of a person sweeping in front of a shop at night. And it seemed to me actually not in Asia. It seemed to me to be in London. I don't know if I'm wrong. Royal Hill. Nice title, right? And it's the end of a day, obviously. The person who is sweeping the floor or the road, the front of the shop, I was imagining, I could be wrong, is that they're actually doing the last thing they do before the shift ends in the shop. So they're on their way to leave their workplace. And a lot of the footage that we see of people walking, doing things, ambling, there is a relationship between what they're doing and their time. And one of the things that I found quite remarkable by its absence in a project that called itself About Capital, in the reading of Das Kapital, was that there were very few pictures of people at work. It wasn't that there were none. I know that in the Vietnam footage there was one. And I, in my search for more pictures of work, zeroed in on the children doing the mathematics lesson, because they were producing a sense of quantity, of measure. So, what am I trying to get at? I'm trying to get at an understanding where the reason why the king's head is on the coin, or the reason why so much investment in the history of filmmaking, culture, art, is to produce that one exception that we can all access, right? I mean, in a sense, the king's picture before the main feature film presentation, or the national anthem before the film presentation. In India, we have it too. Everyone has to stand up in the cinema. And there's actually been a case in the Supreme Court about whether you must stand in the cinema or not. The Supreme Court has ruled that you don't have to stand, but people get beaten up for not standing anyway, right? But what is it about? I mean, it's probably about the fact that in much of these situations, that's the only access we have to feeling that actually the king's head is in our hands. We hold it. This is ours. The illusion of statecraft and of power is to give you a sense that you produce the image of the king. And this is a very old idea. All forms of kingship since the ancient Persians rested on the contact of the eyes. The king would produce themselves to be seen by subjects, which is why so much of art history is portraits of kings and queens. It's to produce an image that people can say, this is what rules us. Because to have a picture of what rules you, to have an image of the head that rules you, is one of the best ways to not look at what rules you. I don't know if I'm making myself clear. So let's say that there is, to use David's term, a certain authorial reserve in capitalism. Capitalism never tells you the full story about itself. It tells you there is power, you're a part of it, the king is you. I mean, what about that famous Hollywood musical, The King and I, right? It's set in Thailand. So it's about the king and you. And you and the king make this up together. You and the boss do this together. So what is implicit in the narrative of film and of art is often the idea that people have actually given their consent to being ruled. So you're not just leaving the factory, you're going to the factory every day. You're going there because you think that this is what life is like. This is what it should be like. There should be a king, there should be traffic lights, there should be a factory, there should be a division of time. And this is something that we all participatively produce together. What it doesn't tell you, the story, is that for the king to be where he is, there needs to be the police and the army and the jails and the laws that keep you in place. So that's capitalism's authorial reserve, which tells you that the police and the army is there for your enemies. It's not there because you are wrong. It's there because of all the bad people. All cinema, all the crime films in the world are telling you that the police is there to protect you from those bad people, right? And that's again part of the authorial reserve or the self-censorship of capitalism, that it doesn't want to tell you that the police is there, first of all, to keep an eye on you. And I would say that in the history of cinema, in the history of image making, we have to always look at when are people leaving the frame, when are people entering the frame, when does the hero become the hero, when does the head take the center, and when do the heads roll. That's my whatever.
결국은 그렇다면은 생업타님의 말씀처럼 많은 예술가들이 또 그런 인간을 지배하기 위해서 생산되는 이미지 제작에 또한 참여하는 꼴이 되기도 하는 거죠.
And also, we must be clear, I think you're right, that it's not just a question of patronage. The forms of power that exist in the world are artistic creations. It's not artists only who create them. The forms of power, the modes by which states and state-like bodies address the world are actually aesthetic objects. So it's not, I mean, I was always fascinated by what I think is the pinnacle of sovereign cinema, which is the North Korean dynasty. And their, what's his name? Kim Jong-il actually wrote a film theory textbook called Introduction to Cinema, What is Cinema? Or something like that. It's one of those. And he had these bizarre concepts we were talking about, that every film must have a seed. It's film theory, right? And he was making film theory because actually the North Korean state is an exercise in film theory. But it produces it with a great clarity. All other forms of the state also are. So if you want to really understand, let's say Boris Johnson in the United Kingdom, please look at the films of Kim Jong-il.
어떻게 보면은 되게 고통스러운 얘기가 될 수도 있겠지만은 예를 들면 저희 이 워크숍 프로젝트도 국립현대미술관에서 제작 지원을 했는데 결국 그 배우에 있는 결국 자본 어떠한 정도의 힘과 권력을 가지고 통제를 하던 간에 벗어날 수 없는 굴레가 되는 건지는 모르겠습니다. 근데 결국 왕정이든 뭐 지금 말씀하신 것처럼 어떤 권력, 자본 결국 기결되는 이런 부분들이 있는데 데뷔테님의 아까 강연의 경우가 결국은 같은 맥락인 것 같아요. 그렇기 때문에 저희가 어떻게 보면 대단히 때로는 추상적으로 접근하는 작가의 어떤 권리, 주체성 이것을 일단은 별개로 두고 얘기를 시작했던 게 아닌가 그런 생각이 듭니다. 데뷔테님 좀 더 아울러서 얘기를 더 듣고 싶습니다. 연결해서.
That we're too theoretical about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's. I share your anxiety about even conducting such a conversation in a museum. I mean, the museum is, if you stack it up art historically, the museum is the enemy of the sort of authorship that we're here to enact. Right? It is precisely the mediating institution whose role it is to regulate our individuality as producers, right? So, but at the same time, I think in this day and age, it also ought to be said that it's very unusual for a museum to invite this sort of discussion still, even today. Despite how popular in international contemporary art discourse the notion of collectivity is as an abstraction, but also as a kind of object, right? I mean, racks have an art dealer. They work in the gallery system sometimes. They need to in order to create a sustainable kind of practice. And so we all, I think, in different ways have a stake in that as well. And I think it's actually a testament to a museum that can also see beyond that. Is it dangerous to be too theoretical about it? I don't know, but my feeling is that while we may be theoretical about it, I think the consumption of the idea of collectivity in the art world is not very theoretically informed at all. I think the consumption of the idea of the collective is not very different to the zombie scrolling sort of consumption, maybe. It's I don't want to reduce it simply to a trend. I think it is more profound than that, and I think the readiness of the art world, I would like to think that the readiness of the art world to address collective modes of authorship in perhaps a more vigorous way than in some other periods, I think needs to be welcomed. But I have to say, generally speaking, I don't feel that it is theorized very much, and it doesn't necessarily need to be theorized. I think it needs to be critically analyzed, and I don't think maybe that happens very often.
네, 저도 동감합니다. I agree.
No, I totally agree. In the sense that, first of all, I think we all need to understand that collective production is not an alternative to capitalism. In fact, capitalism produces collective production. Nothing socializes production relations more than capitalism does. So it is only the naivete of the contemporary art world's theoretical discourse that assumes that being a collective is somehow you're a figure of resistance. I will be the first person to say that the Rux Media Collective is not a figure of resistance by virtue of being collective. We could have been a firm of chartered accountants, which are also collectives, right? The point that I'm trying to make is that one of the authorial reserve of capital, the reason why it doesn't tell you the full story, is because it wants people to persist, it wants social life to persist with the fiction that there exist individuals who can be embodiments of wealth and power. Individuals are people who enjoy wealth and power, but they're not necessarily the machines, levers, and we could say that, let's say, if we move between volume 1 of Karl Marx's Das Kapital to volume 3, in the space of those three books, even the old man Marx is realizing that there is almost no such thing as private property by 1881. It's all gone. What property exists, or capital exists, as a certain set of relationships that describe and produce the nature of work. So we, in our fiction, in our dreamlike delusion, in ideological delusion, think that the capitalist means someone wearing a top hat and tails, or the capitalist means, what's it now, the Frank Zuckerberg. Mark Zuckerberg, right? I don't even have his name right? Or Bezos or Elon Musk. These are symbolic figures. They are produced by contemporary culture to give us an idea. They're idols of our time. They're not necessarily descriptions of capitalism. They are part of the cinema that capitalism produces for us. And it's very important for us to understand that capitalism, and therefore, in your footage, there seems to be, for me, a search, an unsuccessful search for relationality, for trying to understand what is it that's happening when we see a shot or a frame. There's a wonderful segment where there's a car, some mountains, and a lot of cattle, oxen. That's a picture of capital. But you don't know it. I mean, you do, but if I were to ask you, what is it that makes it a picture of capital? I think the fact that you shot that sequence will help you find an answer one day.
Yeah. Okay. So from from filmmaking, a filmmaker, I think that when we make a film, maybe we have some concept, but you know we in fact the creative process is not one by one, like you have a concept, so now you try your best to make concept realize into the film, and I think that in fact the one image is very open, and there are many ways to get meaning from image, even when you have you are an audience, you define this image, this clip is about capital in your way, in your understanding of your theory of capital. But for example, I am another audience. Maybe I have another way to connect to the image. So for me, this successful is also successful in cinema.
It
Yeah.
can never be successful.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, when I say it's an unsuccessful attempt, I am saying, who is it that said today, or was it you that talked about a claim on infinity? Blanchot, right? You invoked Blanchot as the work of art is never finished. It's a claim on infinity. The unsuccessful nature of the attempt to describe capitalism is the best thing that you can do. It's better than saying, I have defined it.
Yeah. So I think that because both of you talk a lot about for me theoretical aspect, and I think that theoretical theory and practice sometimes they are very different. But sometimes the practice and theory is the same. I mean the practice of filmmakers also have theoretical aspects, and with a film or with a video we can contribute theoretical aspect to theory, and in fact, the capital is maybe is a concept, but if we think capital as a discourse, this means all of us contribute to the discourse of capital. So when we capture an image and we try to follow our understanding of capital, I think that we can touch the concept of capital somehow, and the most meaningful thing for with a filmmaker or an artist, maybe they always try to express their sensible, and by this way they can add some value, unique and somehow new to current situation. Yeah. So.
Can I ask a very practical question to all of you? Except for the little bit in the Vietnam film, like I said, I didn't see work. I didn't see production. I want to know why that happened. Is there a set of practical, logistical reasons, or was there an aesthetic reason, or was there decisions of some kind? I'm curious. That's all.
Yeah, for me, our own interpretation was we never were asked to make contribute files or scenes about capital. We wanted just to react to a certain theme that never had the pressure to show people at work or show people in factories. But for example, I knew that these people would have these files in their folder as capital. Okay. One artist, Shireen Seno, would put it as, and she told me to relay that my capital is to shoot these files in between, in my movement into spaces, in my movement across disciplines. And so in a sense, when she gives me this, I never have to actually open to know that it is about capital. So we never really talked about, okay, we should show this in terms of image and sound, but they in themselves are there as products of capital, are their capital. And this is, and even in my own contributions, I see it that way. So there was never really a very direct thing to portray in this space and in this time. So in a sense, I never have to really actually see them before saying that, oh, this is about capital.
Yeah. When we discuss about capital, yeah, we see some films. Of course, we saw these Lumiere films also about the workers. So it's different generation. Maybe like me, like you, the understanding about the capital, about the materialize of concept of structure, like a worker, whatever. Of course, in Das Kapital, in it the main, but the understanding of new generations when we discuss, it's not there. The concept of working now, it's in their hand now. We are working now. That's maybe it's completely different to push them. Even during discussions, there is some participant in our projects. They tell me about I want to shot workers in the factory, but it's not work. There is no footage on the workers. He suddenly changed, so it's not about the understanding of what the main structure of when we talk about capital itself, about the visual should be a worker, but it's more the concept, the idea about the working now, what is working now. And that's why last night I told you about the Das Kapital is not Das Kapital now, it's Das Data. Yeah.
그 일단 저희 작업 같은 경우에는 그 서두에도 말씀드렸지만 어떤 아티스트들이 무엇을 구체적으로 포착해야 된다라는 어떤 그런 뭐 디스커션이 없었기 때문에 사실은 그 얘기를 들었을 때처럼 저도 이미지를 봤을 때 왜 이런 이미지가 없을까? 우리가 흔히 이제 상상할 수 있는 그런 그 것들도 저도 많은 좀 의문을 가졌었는데요. 그러니까 제가 작업한 거는 어떻게 보면 자본 그 자체에 대해서 작업한 게 아니라 그 많은 아티스트들이 자본이라는 그 단어에 반응한 어떤 태도들, 이런 것들의 흔적을 갖고 저는 작업을 했다라고 생각이 들고요. 그래서 사실은 그 태도들이 갖고 있는 여러 가지 흔적들에서 좀 제가 연결시킬 수 있는 부분들, 또는 전혀 저도 연결하지 못했던 어떤 발견들, 이런 것들에 대한 좀 관심이 좀 많이 생겼던 것들이고, 그래서 제가 생각한 거하고는 굉장히 많이 다른 이미지들이 나왔다, 그런 것들이 좀 당황스럽기도 했고 개인적으로는 굉장히 좀 놀라운 경험이었다 이렇게 볼 수 있을 것 같습니다.
사실 처음에 이 워크숍 프로젝트, 오늘 이야기가 워크숍 프로젝트로 집중되는 것 같아서 사실은 저는 개인적으로 이 이야기들이 또 데뷔태가 오늘 강연한 것과 다 연계가 됐으면 좋겠습니다. 이 워크숍 프로젝트를 진행할 때에는 무슨 작품을 만들기 위한 목적을 가진 건 아닙니다. 그러니까 더 중요한 거는 그 과정이었고, 이 하나의 만들어진 완결된 작품에 대한 평가를 하는 그러한 어떤 순환성 과정에서 더 벗어나서 생각해보고 싶었습니다. 어떻게 보면. 그래서 각자가 조금씩 달랐지만은 어떻게 협업을 할 것이냐, 또는 어떻게 현실을 바라볼 것이냐, 어떻게 이미지를 포착할 것이냐, 그 다음에 이게 데이터화 됐을 때에 그것이 어떻게 사용될 것이냐에 대한 문제까지가, 이런 과정의 이 모든 것들이 하나의 개별적인 또한 담론으로서 생산되기를 바랬기도 했고, 그리고 그 이미지들은 일종의 리포트처럼 기록된, 현장 기록대처럼 쓰여진다고도 생각이 듭니다. 물론 이게 좋은 작품의 결과를 맺어서 저도 굉장히 기대했던 것보다 더 훨씬 좋은 작품도 나와서 놀라기도 했지만은 그것이 목적은 아니었었던 거고, 이 제작 과정의 것들이 어떻게 또 다른 방식으로 이거를 우리가 생산하거나 공유할 수 있느냐에 대한 그런 논쟁을 만들어 나갔으면 하는 그런 목적이 더 컸던 것 같습니다. 그런 점에서는 그 만들면서 일어났었던 과정의 어떤 현상들을 또한 이론화하는 작업도 필요할 것 같다는 생각도 듭니다. 네. 야, 오케이. 질문을 좀, 네, 데뷔태님도 그 질문을 좀 받고 싶습니다. 너무 이쪽만 얘기하고 있는 것 같아가지고요. 네.
네, 여러분 말씀 굉장히 흥미롭게 잘 들었고요. 다만 그 슈더브라타 생쿠타 선생님이 말씀하셨던 부분에서 작은 부분을, 제가 아는 부분을 정정하고 싶은 게 있는데요. 제가 알기로는 한국 100원짜리 동전에 있는 이는 왕은 아니고 그 무장 장군이었는데요. 그 16세기에 그 일본과 전쟁을 하면서 임진왜란이라는 전쟁에서 유명해졌던 이순신이라는 무장인 걸로 알고 있고, 한국 화폐 중에서 왕이 있는 것은 이제 10,000원짜리 지폐에 있는 것이 세종이라는 왕으로 알고 있습니다. 근데 이제 이게 재밌는 것이 그 이제 세종이라는 왕에 대한 이제 숭상이 한국에 굉장히 보편적이고, 이를테면 이 국립현대미술관에서 나가면 경복궁 앞에 이제 대로가 펼쳐져 있는 광화문 앞에 길 이름도 그 왕 이름을 딴 세종로이기는 한데, 굉장히 지금 가면 동상이 2개가 있는데요. 하나는 앉아 있는 세종대왕의 동상이고, 하나는 서 있는 아까 말씀하신 100원짜리 동전에 있는 이제 이순신이라는 무장의 동상이 더 오랜 세월 동안 거기에 서 있었던 것으로 알고 있고, 네. 그리고 그 이순신이라는 장군의 동상을 세운 이는 1961년에 쿠데타로 정권을 잡아서 79년까지 이제 장기 집권을 했던 박정희라는 군인 출신 독재자 대통령이 이순신을 동상도 세우고 동전에도 넣고, 그러면서 이제 무신들이 왕정 시대의 장군들의 숭배를 한국의 현대사에 끌어와서 그 장군의 이름을 딴 뭐 충무로 뭐 이런 길 이름을 짓기도 하고, 거기가 한국 영화사에 굉장히 오랜 중요한 지역이기도 했는데요. 뭐 그러한 역사를 본인이 군인 출신이었기 때문에 과거의 군인들을 끌어오는 숭배를 하기도 하고, 또 뭐 이를테면 그 박정희는 필리핀의 마르코스와 같은 해에 계엄령을 선포하는 방식으로 아시아의 다른 어떤 군사 독재와 이렇게 동세대적인 그런 것들을 갖기도 했는데, 그의 딸의 지난번에 2017년에 탄핵되었던 정원임 대통령이 그의 딸이기도 했던 것을 또 여러분께는 저는 잘 아시고 계실 텐데요. 근데 이제 그런 부분에서 현실 정치와 연관된 예술 창작의 문제를 질문 드리고 싶은데, 예, 그 딸의 시대에 한국의 문화예술계에서는 블랙리스트라는 것이 실행되어서 이렇게 정권과 이렇게 같은 기호를 가지지 않았다거나 정치적으로 이렇게 저항을 하는 활동을 한다거나 할 때에 과거의 군사 정권 시대처럼 직접적으로 이제 작품이 검열되거나 배제당하는 일도 있었고, 특히 최근에는 국가가 지원하는 지원금이라든지 펀드 같은 것에서 자본을 매개로 해서 국가가 예술가를 배제하거나 억압하는 사건들이 있었고, 정권이 바뀌고 나서도 그것이 제대로 청산되거나 이렇게 정확하게 처벌을 받거나 하지 못하는 상황에 있고, 미술계도 그것이 심각한 것으로 저는 알고 있는데요. 한국뿐만이 아니라 아시아에서 자본이라는 것이 예술에 작용하는 것이 전적으로 자본의 질서로만 얘기될 수 있을까? 여전히 현실 정치 권력, 위정자들, 국가 권력과 함께 자본이 작동하거나 혹은 권력의 도구가 되는 상황들도 좀 있지 않을까 하는데, 시간이 남지는 않았지만 혹시 이 부분에 대해서 추가로 말씀해 주실 분이 계시면 말씀을 좀 듣고 싶습니다.
Well, thank you for the correction. I mean, I think that actually helps us think more clearly, because it's fine. I mean, they all look the same. But the generals and kings are kings and generals. So it's not, it doesn't take away from the larger point that I think we're trying to discuss. I think, as far as I'm concerned, we were discussing this yesterday over dinner. We live in a time when we should not we live in a time of relative abundance, where all the things that we consume, and it's very interesting, in all your workshop footage, there are lots of images of consumption. There are people going to malls, there are people, so there is what happens after the working day is over. So, I mean, even going to the fairground and the Ferris wheel and things like that. Now, what's interesting for me, what's fascinating for me, is not the idea that work is difficult. Work is, you didn't choose to shoot work. What is interesting for me is that actually more people are workers today than they have ever been before, and more people go to factories than they have ever been before. Not only do they go to factories, their factories are in their hands. Their work is in their hands, as you said, right? So in a sense, the modes of production have expanded into our lives much more than they did when Karl Marx wrote Das Kapital. So we're living in a much more capitalist society than we were before, than our grandparents were before. The point is that we live in a society across the world where the things that we can consume, whether it's food or clothes or culture or art, there should be an abundance of it. In fact, there is. But that abundance is communicated to us as if it was scarcity. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? Is that there is enough housing or there is enough food for everybody, but yet we pay a very high price for it, right? And that price that we pay, which is that we take away from the wages that we get, we give away 2/3, like even people, for instance, I don't know how much it costs to be a student in university here. But if you look at the United States, people are paying money to become workers, which is what university education is. And then they are paying from their wages to pay the loan that they took as a student, right? At the same time, they're living in a society which is the most abundant that humanity has produced. So surely there must be something going on in our time that makes us agree that we will pay. And as far as I'm concerned, that's the hidden story of capital. That's why we have militaries, that's why we have the police, that's why we have democracies that are actually dictatorships and dictatorships that produce consent from their people. I mean, that's true in my country. That's true in your country as well. That's true whether a country calls itself socialist, whether it calls itself free market, where there are no free markets. There is a reason why so much power, so much investment is produced in our world to keep, to keep things in order. There doesn't need to be. I mean, that's for me the relationship between the violence of state power and the reality of capital. I don't know if I've answered your question.
Okay, I'm just going to ask in English. I think, Devi, you have a very interesting resonance to position of artists, like authorship of art, in equivalence of the position of dictator in some way in your presentation. I think it kind of makes sense, like also if we kind of think about the notion of notion of contemporary or modern contemporary art sovereignty, that it's actually the beginning, like it's kind of born with the citizenships of like 18th centuries, or so after that it was actually the notion of art. It has been understood as there's different authorship compared to the medieval feudalisms, and I think, I mean, in our times actually the religious work or art, it doesn't count as like art actually, right? But in the context of the Southeast Asia, actually the full launch of this citizenship in a way is very complicated. Actually, it's not really suitable to think about the Western canon of the democracies and etc. So in that way, actually, there's a quite of extremely interesting example, like Jose Maceda's, supported by the dictator and launched like played a one day, whole day, this kind of experimental music for the people that is absolutely like avant-garde music, the sound experiment, and also like including the Kim Jong-il, like he also wrote about the theory of the choreography, not only the theory of the film. So this book is also fantastically described all these kind of aesthetic speculation of the aesthetics of the choreographies, including the thinking of the 민족 dance, the people's dance in the communism ideology. But I think there's somehow these performance of the dictators as the position of artists that somehow quite particularly we can kind of maybe think about also the sort of specific to the Southeast Asia, but I mean, in general, also the dictator has. I was kind of curious, like why the dictator is kind of have this equivalence of the position of artists somehow, like and then the press the other artists' positions as more artisans, or or serving for his like only for the producing the skillful way. So I don't know, like it's and also you once mentioned about like in terms of the Singapore, the most interesting curatorial job is, what actually the government does, right? So I think I found your presentation, it has like interesting ambivalences to think about dictatorships, and I don't know, it's, is there anything you want to, but there's a definitely, I mean, dangerous, but I guess like it's, I don't want to bring this kind of typical judgment by the, you know, the democracies, but also the democracies these days, it doesn't really have any full capacity existing as a democracy. So I don't know, like it's, is there any?
Democracy is maybe not what it was, but then I think it's also dangerous for us to assume that there was some halcyon days of democracy where everything was free and fair. But I take the point, and yeah, I mean, I guess you know, what I would say more by way of concluding what I think, you know, you've expressed very well, is that we're talking about multiple models of subject here, right? Like there's different sorts of subjectivity wrapped up in the figure of a dictator, and as we've discovered with the Kim Jong-il or whoever, right, that they're not straightforward bad guys, you know. It's like Breaking Bad has made us think about the villain in a different way, and I think we need to be doing that. Where the artist is concerned, I think in ambient ethical discussions around contemporary art, the ambient ethos of contemporary art as a global industry, I think has a normative subject that is Western and liberal and democratic. It comes from where you mentioned, but I think it's been pluralized as well. I think it's been complicated by the sheer force of globalization in the art world. But it nevertheless is still the determinant subject position, right? The artist in that global contemporary art world has a history, right? And that history is not the history of the whole world. That history is very, very specific culturally. And so when it comes to, I mean, I'm glad that it was legible in my talk, that when it comes to a place like Southeast Asia, I think what I'm hoping to do is to rip apart that normativity, right? Like the norm in Southeast Asia is authoritarianism, right? Now that, it doesn't matter if you're a political realist or a liberal or a radical, or if you're a conservative. The norm of politics in our part of the world is dictatorial, right? And so I don't think we have to go very far. I don't think we have to push our terminology very much further, actually, to look for the model subject that's actually at issue. And this is the same for other sorts of work as well, I think. I don't think the artist is somehow necessarily different to other workers in this respect.
Can I just add a little bit to this? Let's never forget the Southeast Asian country called the United States of America. And they had a remarkable president who we don't theorize enough about, which is Ronald Reagan, which I think produced a model of politics that has had a very pervasive influence. If you didn't have Ronald Reagan scripting the presidency in the way he did, you wouldn't have had Donald Trump scripting the presidency in the way he does, which is like it's a 24-hour cinema, as a kind of burlesque, as a comic horror film, if you like, right? And that's got models that are replicated in the Philippines with Duterte, with Modi, with Netanyahu, with Putin. There are all these guys who are scripting a kind of 24-hour cinema of themselves, which is a very fascinating thing to understand. So I would take, let's say, David's lecture as a key, saying that Southeast Asian politics and cultural politics provides us with a method by which we can look at also other realities. Just as, I mean, if you look at, let's say, the evolution of political power in the United Kingdom, it had a transactional nature. That, I mean, like you could understand British politics in the 19th and 20th centuries by thinking about bankers and financial models, and that was helpful in understanding other places. But we can also now take Norodom Sihanouk or Kim Jong-il or the Thai monarchy as a means with which to think about other spaces. If you look at, let's say, Italian fascism or German or Nazism, I think the model is architectural, right? So that's a method by which we can begin to look at the architecture of space elsewhere. So these are all different kinds of methods with which one can begin to understand this relationship between, let's say, politics and art. Let me conclude by saying that if you look at Plato's Republic, there are famously two prohibitions why artists should not be citizens. One is that artists tell lies, right? There's a second prohibition, which is not as given as much attention, in which Plato says that the business of the polis, of politics, is to tell a story. And there must be one story. If we let artists become citizens, they will distract people by telling other stories. And the citizen will be distracted because he will begin, or she will be, I mean, for Plato there's no she, he will begin hearing a different story, and that can complicate and mess things up. Which means that Plato understands, and this is the foundation of constitutional politics, is that politics is an aesthetic project, right? So I am always interested not in artists who call themselves political, because I don't think that does much for me. But I'm always interested in political structures that are actually aesthetic. And that's, I mean, I think that's where Marx knew it well. If you read 18th Brumaire of Louis Napoleon, it's a soap opera, right? So there are different political forms.
네, 6시에 미술관이 문을 닫는 관계로 네, 얘기를 하다가 만 것 같은 느낌도 들고, 근데 굉장히 생각해야 될 부분이 너무나 많은 그런 이야기들이었습니다. 일요일에 이렇게 자리에 참석해 주신 여러분들 너무 감사드리고요. 저희 즐겁게 이번 행사에 참여해 주신 우리 게스트 여러분들에게도 박수 부탁드립니다.